All right, yeah. We're talking about epithelial tissue. Um, well, let me just say this that before we start talking about it, let's just get some little bit of background. So, of course, remember from basic biology that whenever we talk about tissue, right, we're basically talking about a group of cells. So, when you have a group of cells, you know, with similar structure, similar functions, when they come together, you know, to perform a similar function. Okay, so perform a similar function, we say that we have a tissue. Okay, so a very good example is the blood tissue. So when you look at the blood tissue, for example, blood is a liquid tissue. So there are several cell components that makes up the blood tissue. So like you have the red blood cells, you know, you have the white blood cells, you have the platelets, you know, you have the plasma cells. So all these are various cell components, that makes up the blood tissue. And all of these cells, if you look at them, they generally have like a similar function in a way. Okay, so that is what a tissue is all about. So what are the types of tissue that we have in the body? Okay, so generally in the body, there are four basic types of tissue that you need to know. There are four of them. Okay, so like what that means is that all the tissues you have in the human body, they've all been grouped collectively into four types. Okay, so the first one is the epithelial tissue, which is the one we're going to be talking about in this video. So we have the epithelial tissue. Okay, that's the first type of tissue that you have. Second type of tissue that we have in the body is the connective tissue. Okay, the connective tissue. Then the third type is the muscle tissue, and then fourth one is the nervous tissue or nerve tissue. Okay, so the nervous tissue or the nerve tissue. So generally it is good that you know that the muscle tissue and the nervous tissue are the only one that are excitable. Okay, like they are excitable, and you understand what I mean by that as we go on in this video. So, but for the purpose of this particular class, let's just focus on the epithelial tissue. Okay, so so what is epithelial tissue or simply epithelium? What do we mean whenever we talk about? So whenever you say the word epithelial tissue or simply epithelium, just know that it's just talking about the same thing. So I can be using them interchangeably in this video. So epithelial cells are cells that are closely packed together, and I want to take note of these words: closely packed together. That is a very unique feature of epithelial cells. Okay, so they are closely packed together and they kind of like form a continuous sheet. Okay, so closely packed together and kind of like form a what? Form a continuous sheet. So so what do I mean by that? So when you look at the typical epithelial tissue, you see several cells, okay, that are packed together. That is, there is little or no space in between them. Okay, there's little or no space in between them, and this is like one major difference between epithelial tissue and connective tissue. Okay, so if you look at connective tissue on the other hand, for example, you see that connective tissue cells are separated. Okay, they are not as compacted as epithelial tissue. So in between connective tissues, you have substances that we refer to as the extracellular matrix. So these are the cells. Okay, then all these substances in between them refers to those substances as what? As the extracellular. And I think it makes sense, right? Extracellular, that is outside the cell. But in epithelial tissue rather, you have the cells closely packed together. Okay, and there are little or no extracellular matrix in between them. That's for the epithelial tissue, and that's why it's that they are packed together, unlike what you have in connective tissue. In the other lecture video, we're going to be talking about connective tissue, and I get to understand that aspect better. Okay, so what are the functions of epithelial tissue? So, five major functions you need to take note about epithelial tissue. Number one is protection. Okay, so epithelial tissue helps wherever they are found, is they help to protect the group of cells in that region where they are found. Okay, so they protect the organ, the tissue, the cells in that region. They protect them from damage, from abrasion, from injury, and all of those things. Number two, they help to subserve transcellular transport. So you realize that when you look at so let me just try to use this picture to discuss what epithelial tissue is all about. So typically when you look, this is how epithelial tissue looks like in the body. Okay, so you have these cells that you are seeing here, those are the epithelial tissue. Okay, then you can see this blue um, structure underneath here. That is the basement membrane. So you need to know that epithelial tissue always rests on the basement membrane. Okay, so they always rest on the basement membrane, and because of this, generally we say that epithelial tissue has two poles. Okay, so sometimes you will hear the word that epithelial tissue displays polarity. Yes, they do. They displays polarity because number one, they have like two poles, two sides. So now you can see this place is the what is the lumen, right? And this is where you have the basement membrane. So the side of the epithelial tissue that is in contact with the basement membrane, okay, refers to that as what? As the basal surface. The basal surface. That is the side of the epithelial tissue that is in contact with the what? With the basement membrane. The side of the epithelial tissue on the other side, that is usually facing the lumen, that is the apical surface of the epithelial tissue. That is the apical surface. Okay, so and we also have the lateral surface, or what we call the basolateral surface. That is the surface of the epithelial tissue that is between themselves. So like this place, and this is a basolateral surface. This is another what? This is another basolateral or lateral surface. Okay, so because of that, we say epithelial tissue displays polarity. Now back to what I was trying to explain earlier. So epithelial tissue help to subserve transport. So if you look at this now, you can see that usually whenever a substance want to enter a cell or leave, or want to enter a particular tissue, organ, something like that, it has to pass between the epithelial tissue. So that way epithelial, and sometimes it can pass. So if it passes between the epithelial tissue, we call it a what? A paracellular transport. Para means what? Beside. Paracellular. If it passes over the epithelial tissue, okay, that is a what? That is a transcellular transport. Okay, that is a transcellular transport. So you can have a paracellular transport, you can have a transcellular transport, and the point is that epithelial tissue helps to subserve these functions. Okay, so let's go back to the other functions of epithelial tissue. So another function epithelial tissue, does is that they help in secretion. So as we are going to talk about later on in this video, we realize that epithelial tissue can either serve as a lining or sheet, and some of them can serve as a gland. So and all these glands they help in what secretion of various substances like hormones, like enzymes, etc. Okay, so and epithelial tissue also helps in absorption. So there are epithelial tissue that has structures such as villi on them, and if you remember from biology, that in the gastrointestinal tract, especially in the small intestine, we talk about the fact that the small intestinal cells have what? Have microvilli. And that these microvilli are very, very essential when it comes to absorption, right? So and another thing that epithelial tissue helps to do is that they help in detection of sensation. Epithelial tissue helps in the detection of what? Of sensation. Okay, so like some of them serve as receptors on the skin, and all that, and in that way they help in detection of sensation. Okay, so those are like the functions of epithelial tissue that you need to take note of. So now, what are the special characteristics of epithelial tissue? And I want to take note of this. Sometimes you tend to get this in the MCQ questions. They will tell you, oh, the following are properties of epithelial tissue, and then so you have to note what I will be talking about now. Now, I already mentioned this before. Adjacent cells are bound together by what cell junction. So epithelial tissues are tightly packed together, and this is because they have what we call a tight or occluding cell junctions. Okay, so later on, I'm going to be talking about cell junctions. Okay, so I realize that one of the types of cell junction that we have is the tight, what we call the tight slash the what occluding cell junctions. Okay, so these cell junctions help to hold cells tightly together such that there is little or no space in between cells. So epithelial tissue tends to have this type of junctions. That is not the only type of junction that could exist in epithelial tissue. You could have the other types like the anchoring junctions, and the gap junctions. But you just have to take note of the fact that they have this tight junction that helps to band them tightly together. Okay. Another thing you need to know, like I mentioned previously, is that the lower surface of all types of epithelial, they rest on the basement membrane. Well, this statement, it might not be completely true, because in certain types of epithelial tissue, all the cells, okay, all the cells might not rest on the basement membrane. Okay, all the cells might not actually rest on the basement membrane or the basal. So basement membrane, you can also call it the basal lamina. Okay, so you can also call it the basal lamina or the basement membrane.